eastwards, so will eventually arrive into parts of northwest England and Wales later on today. Can't rule out the odd sharp shower for some central southeastern areas of England, but in general it is this southeastern quadrant of the UK that's going to hold on to the best of the sunshine. Generally less humid compared to some recent days, but still pleasantly warm in that sunshine, has a 23-24 degrees Celsius. More around high teens where we have that cloud, but once the main band pushes its way through, there will be some sunny spells emerging for Northern Ireland and particularly eastern Scotland as we do head later on in the afternoon and the evening. Our next area of rain, though, is going to be steadily moving its way into western Scotland as we head into the overnight period. This one coming with a slightly freshening breeze, a brisk around some coastal regions, and it will eventually turn heavy over some of the hills and the mountains across northwestern Scotland. Everywhere else, though, should stay largely dry tonight with some clear spells. A few mist and fog patches forming, particularly across the south and the west, but otherwise fairly mild with temperatures holding up around 10 to 15 degrees Celsius. The rain will be on and off throughout the day on Monday for northwestern Scotland, so quite damp here, and again still with that brisk wind around at times. But elsewhere it will be a fairly pleasant start to the new working week, some sunny spells emerging for most of us, and temperatures actually beginning to climb up a little bit more. So now seeing the chances of 26 degrees Celsius in the southeast and even 20 for central eastern areas of Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland. It's a trend that's going to continue throughout this week. The sunshine will become increasingly prolonged and temperatures are going to climb even further. Bye-bye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£54,321 cash could be yours. Cash that you could spend however you like. It's like having an extra £1,000 each week for a whole year to play with. Someone is guaranteed to win this amazing amount of cash, so make sure that someone could be you. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. Author L.M. Montgomery once wrote, "June is the pearl of summer, shining with warmth and joy." After a dazzling week of spectacular sunshine for many, I hope to emulate that bright illumination as I welcome you to Sunday with Michael Portillo for 2 hours of arts, culture, politics and current affairs. Another week, another government U-turn. This time the Prime Minister, who had set his face against a national inquiry into the rape gangs in northern cities and elsewhere, describing demands for such an inquest as jumping on a right-wing bandwagon, has announced that we will have one. My panel will discuss what political pressures led him to adopt the first position and what stronger political pressures have led him to abandon it. The number of those injured in Iranian strikes on Israel overnight has risen to 170, with the death toll currently standing at 10. Former NATO chief Nicholas Williams will join me as RAF jets are deployed to the region. On Wednesday, the Chancellor unveiled her spending review in the House of Commons, promising a £190 billion boost to the day-to-day running of public services. Economist Roger Bootle tells us whether we should expect tax rises in the autumn. And from bodyline to Bazball, the first narrative history of Test cricket has been written by the Telegraph's Tim Wigmore. He'll join me to discuss his new book as Test cricket nears its 150th anniversary. But first, your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you. Just after 11 o'clock, the top story this hour. Sir Keir Starmer has now announced a full statutory inquiry into grooming gangs following a damning audit by Baroness Louise Casey. The Prime Minister said he had accepted her recommendation for a national investigation into group-based child sexual abuse across England and Wales. The inquiry will have legal powers to compel evidence and testimony and will coordinate targeted local investigations, even where councils object. Sir Keir Starmer said he'd read every word of Casey's report and now believed a fresh inquiry was the right thing to do. It's a major shift for the government, which earlier this year resisted calls for a national probe despite pressure from victims, opposition MPs and figures like Elon Musk. The Home Secretary Yvette Cooper will give a common statement tomorrow, with Casey's full report expected to be published at the same time. Israel has launched fresh strikes on Iranian nuclear sites, with officials in Tehran threatening a more severe response if they continue. Israeli emergency services say 10 people have now been killed and over 100 injured. The attacks come just as Iran and the US were due to resume nuclear talks today, but those talks have now been cancelled, according to mediators in Oman. Meanwhile, the G7 summit in Canada is now being overshadowed by that escalating conflict in the Middle East. Leaders had planned to focus on trade, energy security and Russia's war in Ukraine. But Israel's strikes on Iran are now centre stage. Sir Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron have called for restraint. But Japan has condemned Israel's actions, while President Donald Trump has praised them. Well, our political editor Chris Hope is in Canada for us, and he says there appears to be growing and deep divisions among G7 leaders.
The G7 in Canada is all back to the world stage. He said overnight to us that Canada is an independent and sovereign country and a much valued member of the Commonwealth. That needs to be said because Donald Trump covets this country as the 51st state of the United States of America. And over all that, the big issue here for the world leaders is what's happening in Iran and Israel. Overnight, the UK has sent RAF Typhoons to protect assets in the Middle East. It is getting very, very tense on a global stage, and that will dominate the G7 when it starts in earnest tomorrow.
It comes as British military jets are being sent to the Middle East amid the intensifying conflict. Sir Keir Starmer has confirmed Typhoons and air-to-air refuelling aircraft have been deployed. Contingency support across the region, he says, but stressed the UK's message remains focused on de-escalation. The death toll from Thursday's plane crash in Ahmedabad has now risen to 270, according to doctors at the city's main hospital. The London-bound Air India flight came down seconds after takeoff, crashing into a residential building. Only one person, a 40-year-old British man, is confirmed to have survived. Officials are still working to identify victims and confirm how many people were killed on the ground. A black box has been recovered, and investigators from India, the UK and US are now examining what went wrong. And the Prince and Princess of Wales have released 2 new photos of Prince William with his children George, Charlotte and Louis to mark Father's Day. One shows them lying on the grass in black and white, cuddling, and the other a portrait with William's arms around his children. The caption posted alongside the photos reads, "Papa, we love you. Happy Father's Day." The pictures were taken by photographer Josh Shiner, the same man behind the family's 2023 Christmas card. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll squeeze in a quick Happy Father's Day to my dad, just in case I forget later. Those are the latest headlines. Now it's over to Michael.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sam Francis. And as we heard in the news, in a major U-turn last night, Prime Minister announced a national statutory inquiry into how public authorities handle the rape gangs in northern cities and elsewhere. Comes in response to Baroness Casey's audit of the scandal. It seems that local authorities and police forces were reluctant to act, fearing that they would be accused of racism, since many of the accused, and indeed many of those who were eventually convicted, were men of Pakistani origin. The authorities preferred to blame and stigmatise the children who'd been their victims. What were the political pressures that made Labour so opposed to an inquiry? And what are the pressures that have proved stronger now and pushed them to reverse their decision? Joining me is the panel for today. Opinions and Features Editor at City AM, Alice Denby, former Conservative advisor Jennifer Powers, and former Labour aide Matthew Lazar. Welcome to you all. Matthew, let's start with you. I put it to you that the pressure that stopped Labour getting to this position before today was the fear that Muslim voters might desert Labour and go to sectarian candidates.
Look, I don't think it was as cynical as that. I think that the line that the government had, which is that there was this previous report that, into historic sexual abuse, it wasn't specifically on grooming gangs. It had these recommendations which hadn't been put in place before the election, etc. I think that was true. I think the big problem is the politics of this are really about how the government approaches issues rather than risking alienating the Muslim vote. Because I think what you're hearing in the Labour Party is, yes, Keir Starmer's a lawyer, so he commissioned a report from Baroness Casey. He's then, as we've heard, Downing Street's been saying he read every word. He's gone through it with his highlighter pen and he's now reached a conclusion. Fine if you're a lawyer, not great if you're a politician. And I think that's the issue, is that they may have got to the right place through a very sensible process, but politically they've been bleeding on this issue, frankly, for the 11 months since the election, when pressure's been mounting, and they've reached the conclusion that if they'd reached that 11 months ago, would have done them much less harm politically, and because they've decided it's the right thing to do, would have done the right thing earlier. So it's not, I think that's the real question that you hear from the Labour Party. Somebody said to me the other day, when's the Prime Minister going to discover how to do politics?
Alice, you've heard an explanation there of what were the pressures on the Labour Party. What do you think? What did you think of my proposition that actually it was the fear of the Muslim voters deserting to sectarian candidates?
Look, I do think you have a point there. There are seats like in Birmingham and Ilford North. There are big beasts of the Labour Party like Jonathan Athwash, who lost his seat to a Gaza independent candidate who mobilised a sectarian Muslim vote. People like Jess Phillips in Birmingham is vulnerable. Wes Streeting in Ilford South. So I think that is something that is playing on Keir Starmer's mind. But I do agree with Matthew Moore that I think what the greater political pressure that is exerted on Keir Starmer is this idea, is that of the faceless bureaucrats. I think whether it's, he's done this because Louise Casey has told him to, he wants to give away the Chagos Islands because the International Court of Justice told him to. He is more, I think, vulnerable to this idea of a kind of rules-based, lawyerly order than he is to any sense of principle or indeed a sense of what's in Britain's best interests.
Jennifer, what do we make of it? Here is yet another U-turn. I began by saying, another week, another U-turn. And what about the political touch here, the sureness or lack of sureness of political touch? I mean, could not any sort of amateur political advisor have said we were going to end up here eventually?
Yes, I think a lot of us were saying that this was going to end up this way. So I agree with both my panellists. This is a triumph of proceduralism over political judgment or indeed principles. And I think that is one of the key challenges for this government, is a lack of values or strategy at the heart of the government. This all happened really quickly on the back of the Casey review being published. But I also think it was years and maybe a decade or more in the making. And I say that because we are now seeing the coming apart of this idea of multiculturalism. And that is this questioning of multi-ethnic society. Absolutely, we all welcome that. But in terms of a culture, what about shared values, shared norms? Shouldn't we be colorblind in terms of victims and in terms of perpetrators? Should we be more concerned about doing the right thing and showing justice to be done than community tension or supposed community tension? So I think there's a lot to unpack here with this decision.
Matthew, if Jennifer is right that we're arriving at a position at last where we're going to be colourblind in these matters, is it a good look that Labour has been dragged to that position kicking and screaming?
I don't think it is a good look, and I frankly think there were a lot of people on the centre-left of politics, including actually quite a lot of left-wing figures like a Labour MP throughout the noughties, Anne Cryer, who was on the far left of the party, was one of the first people to call out these issues. So I think it mustn't become, I think it must be taken away from being a left-right issue. People on the left have to say, we need to do whatever needs to be done, we need to say whatever needs to be said, whatever sensibilities are upset, and whichever nice concepts like multiculturalism and not upsetting people is done. So I think that's the thing. I think one of the issues is that there isn't the wider narrative this week. As you said, we've had another week, another U-turn. Arguably, we've had two because we had the winter fuel allowance, but they did announce it last weekend. They did it this week. And so what I think you're seeing is that what the people are saying is a lack of a story. So Rachel Reeves, she name-checked about 100 constituencies in her speech. Very nice in her spending review speech, but not quite sure what the story is. And on grooming gangs, what's the story? May have ended up in the right place, but the way they're getting it, as you say, too legalistic. The lack of a narrative is what I think that is killing the government, both with the public and therefore with Labour MPs as well.
Alice, a difficult sort of general question. The panel has emphasised proceduralism. Mm-hmm. How does it happen again and again that the government ends up on the wrong side, ends up, in this case, stigmatising victims and giving a free hand to perpetrators of rape? How do these things happen?
Well, I think Keir Starmer has ended up in this position because, as I say, I don't think he has a core sense of what he believes in and what he wants to do with the job of Prime Minister. I think he's there because he just thinks he'd be good at it, without a sense of how he wants the country to change. More broadly, I think I would say that I hope, as well as looking into the ethnic side of this grooming gang scandal, I think it should also be looking at how these girls were let down by the state. Many of these girls were in care. They're terribly, terribly let down by the British state. So I think that that's an issue we need to be looking at as well. I think more broadly, the reason why we have ended up in this position is because of a fear of being called racist. I think people didn't want to highlight that the perpetrators of these crimes were predominantly of Pakistani origin because they were scared of inflaming racial tensions and of being accused of being racist themselves.
Jennifer, my theory about why Reform UK is leaping ahead is it's not just migration. It's about a whole series of things where the British state seems to be on the wrong side of what the majority of public opinion believes. Yeah. And this is yet another example. Now, in this case, do you think Labour, with this U-turn, has done enough to escape from that?
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. The question you asked to Alice, I would answer it this way. The theme that links all of these, or many of these issues, is a lack of accountability. Mm-hmm. We now have a state system which prioritises process over outcome. And that is embedded in the job descriptions, the hierarchies, the hiring policies of the whole state. It has become ossified to the point where the point of the state is for the state to exist. And it's sort of everyone else be damned. And so we see that in particular instances. When I was in Downing Street, the blood contamination scandal was running on into its third decade. And I think there's been 5 prime ministers who've been overseeing that process. And I'm not sure that any of the victims have yet received compensation. We saw the post office scandal. We've seen the grooming gangs, which, as Matthew said, these were flagged 20 months ago. So this lack of accountability for officials, for politicians, is a real issue. And until and unless the government solves that, I'm afraid we're only going to see more of this.
Thank you very much, panel. I think you've taken us to profound places there. Now, I'd just stay there for a moment, if you would. Our political editor, Christopher Hope, travelled with the Prime Minister of Canada for the G7 summit, and I think it was on the aircraft that the Prime Minister made this statement about the change in policy on the grooming gangs. How did you react to that, Christopher?
Well, I couldn't believe it, Michael. It's actually my question. What happens in these trips is you fly over to the G7 with the Prime Minister, very privileged position. You're on his plane, and we agree what to ask him. I thought I'd ask him about the grooming gangs. There's a leak on yesterday, saying that he should recommend a national inquiry. I said simply, would you agree with that and go with that if Louise Casey says we need a national inquiry? And he then did a long preamble and then said that she looked at the material, this Louise Casey. She's come to the view that there should be a national inquiry. I have read every single word of her report and I am going to accept her recommendation. And there we have it. He then said there'd be a statutory inquiry under the Inquiries Act, which gives the chair of the inquiry, whether it's a lawyer or whoever it is, or judge or whoever it might be, the power to compel people to give evidence to it. So yes, it's one of those moments, I think, in life, you're waiting for something which you think must be coming soon. Suddenly it happens and you're surprised. I did say back in January, as soon as they commissioned Louise Casey for this rapid audit, we were going towards a national inquiry. Your panel chat there is fascinating. I think what we're seeing with Keir Starmer, he is procedural, but when he gets the evidence, he acts on it. So for him, he wasn't going to shoot from the lip or the hip on anything. He wants to get the evidence which he's got there from Louise Casey. He's read that, he's acted, and that's how he's doing his government, whether you like it or not.
And more broadly now, the G7 are going to be meeting in Ottawa. Is it inevitable that the G7 is going to urge Israel to show restraint over Iran?
That is inevitable, and that's what's happening already. We've heard from Sir Keir Starmer again on the flight over to Canada last night. He said he's trying to de-escalate the fighting between Iran and Israel. He said the situation is fast moving to us, and there were discussions with allies at every level. He says that the deployment has already started of RAF Typhoons to the region. That is a contingency support across the region. The idea being there, although they won't say what it is, it looks like we're protecting UK assets in the Middle East, because if we do go towards supporting Israel at any point, and that happened in both April and October last year, if that would happen again, Iran says it could put our assets, or bases or whatever it might be in the Middle East into the possibility of being attacked by Iran. It is very, very tense. So the timing of this G7 meeting, which takes place tomorrow in Banff, we're flying this afternoon to there, is important. As of today, the PM is meeting with, again, formally this time, with the Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney. They went to a bowling game. They watched in a pub a ice hockey game last night. I can tell you the Edmonton Oilers lost 5-2 to the Florida Panthers. The Oilers are Mark Carney's team. But on the way over here, we did hear from Sir Keir Starmer. He made clear the importance of Canada, and he said this, Michael. He said that Canada is an independent, sovereign country and a much valued member of the Commonwealth. Now, that is an obvious thing to say. You and I have known about that. That is Canada's legal situation in the world. But they're saying it because of the activity of Donald Trump. He wants to make this place America's 51st state, and therefore the UK is standing by Canada against Trump.
Yes, and the head of state is His Majesty the King. Thank you very much indeed, Christopher Hope. Thanks also to my panel, Alice Denby, Jennifer Powers and Matthew Lazar. They'll return at noon to discuss whether the targeted killing of enemies, as practised by Israel in Iran, is morally justified. And coming up, as Israel and Iran trade missiles, the Foreign Secretary David Lammy is calling for urgent de-escalation. I'll find out where Britain stands in the conflict. That's coming next. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. That's State of the Nation every Monday and Tuesday at 8 o'clock, only on GB News, the People's Channel.
At GB News, we are proud to stand for you, for the Britain you love, for the communities you live in. That's what makes us the fearless champions of Britain. Its voices and its values. Because we, at GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. In breaking news this morning, the number of those injured in Iranian strikes on Israel overnight has risen to 170. The death toll is currently standing at 10. On the way to Canada last night, Sir Keir Starmer told reporters that RAF jets have been deployed to the region. Joining me now is the former senior official at NATO and senior fellow of the European Leadership Network, Nicholas Williams. Nicholas, welcome to GB News. So, Richard Dearlove was on earlier, former head of MI6, saying that really, nothing could be more in this country's interests than the weakening of Iran and possible regime change. Why then do the G7, why does the British government find it necessary to call for restraint when it looks as though Israel is doing the dirty work that many of us would like to see done?
Well, I think the simple answer is that this whole action by Israel and reaction by Iran has unpredictable and severe consequences. And so, yes, if it could be contained, if it could be de-escalated, that is also in the UK's interest, because it would avoid the possibility of a whole-scale war in the Middle East, which would not be in the UK interest.
The Israeli ambassador was on GB News earlier, and she was saying that the Iranians were getting very near to having a bomb. On the other hand, I heard yesterday on the media a former British ambassador to Iran saying the opposite, that they were not close to getting a bomb. Do you have a view on that?
No, because the experts are totally against or opposed to the definitive statement that Iran is close to a bomb.
So you mean they shy away from saying anything?
They shy away from it, and they also have totally different views. But what is indisputable is that Iran could have a nuclear bomb, whatever the timescale is, but could have, and has threatened Israel with annihilation. So it's almost irrelevant when, it's if.
What you've just said, and I don't want to be overly repetitive, kind of underlines my first point. So we're talking here about a country which could acquire a nuclear weapon and has talked about annihilating Israel. I mean, one does understand why Israel might go after that country without restraint.
Yeah, well, without being repetitive, this unpredictability in the situation is also not in European, British, or even US interests to see a conflagration in the Middle East, which would result in huge rise in energy prices and a widespread division in Europe and the wider area of the Middle East and the world.
Can we try and make the military situation a little more predictable? Iran seems to have lost most of its air defences, which is why Israel is succeeding so well, in an unopposed manner, in hitting so many targets. And on the other hand, although Iran has managed to kill Israelis overnight, for the deluge of missiles that it sent over Israel, the rewards from Iran's point of view have been relatively meagre. It seems Israel very much has the upper hand.
Well, it seems to have the upper hand in terms of being able to access Iranian airspace with relative freedom. But one of the objectives of the Israeli action was to degrade and destroy the ballistic missile sites of the Iranians. And I don't think that they have actually done that to the extent that they would have liked. And so Israel is now vulnerable to waves of ballistic missiles falling on Tel Aviv.
And can you make any assessment of how successful Israel can be in destroying Iranian nuclear sites, which is what it's fundamentally about?
I couldn't make a technical assessment, but all experts and analysts agree that the Iranian nuclear capability and enrichment capability cannot be destroyed totally. They can destroy overground facilities which feed the centrifuges and facilitate the enrichment, but they can't destroy totally that capability. And even if they degraded that capability extensively, the know-how of the Iranians is still there. So they will recover.
Yes, the know-how is there. Of course, Israel has pretty much put nuclear scientists in Iran on notice of death, hasn't it? It has demonstrated that it can target anyone that it wishes. Do you think that has an impact?
Well, it has an impact both ways. Yes, the scientists will be fearful. The top military will be fearful, but the Iranians will be angry, both against their own government, but also against Israel. And the patriotic motive will be stronger as a result of this Israeli strike.
People come together when they're attacked. Quite briefly, could you give me an assessment of the possibility of regime change in Iran?
Well, the idea of Netanyahu is that Iran has been weakened and is weak, and socially it's always been fractious. But I doubt whether regime change is on the cards because, as you say, people come together in the event of widespread attacks.
Nicholas Williams, thank you very much indeed for your very considered comments this morning. Coming up, are further tax rises inevitable following the Chancellor's new spending commitments made on Wednesday? Economist Roger Bootle will be here to give me his view. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News.
Hello there, this is your latest GB News weather updates provided by the Met Office. It is a slightly mixed picture for this second half of the weekend. We do have high pressure building in from the south, keeping many of us fine and settled, but there's also this weather front just slipping its way into the northwest of the UK, and it's already been providing more in the way of clouds, some outbreaks of light rain as well. It's going to continue its journey south and eastward, so we'll eventually arrive into parts of northwest England and Wales later on today. Can't rule out the odd sharp shower for some central southeastern areas of England, but in general it is this southeastern quadrant of the UK that's going to hold on to the best of the sunshine. Generally less humid compared to some recent days, but still pleasantly warm in that sunshine, has a 23-24 degrees Celsius. More around high teens where we have that cloud, but once the main band pushes its way through, there will be some sunny spells emerging for Northern Ireland and particularly eastern Scotland as we do head later on in the afternoon and the evening. Our next area of rain, though, is going to be steadily moving its way into western Scotland as we head into the overnight period. This one coming with a slightly freshening breeze, a brisk around some coastal regions, and it will eventually turn heavy over some of the hills and the mountains across northwestern Scotland. Everywhere else, though, should stay largely dry tonight with some clear spells. A few mist and fog patches forming, particularly across the south and the west, but otherwise fairly mild with temperatures holding up around 10 to 15 degrees Celsius. The rain will be on and off throughout the day on Monday for northwestern Scotland, so quite damp here, and again still with that brisk wind around at times. But elsewhere it'll be a fairly pleasant start to the new working week, some sunny spells emerging for most of us, and temperatures actually beginning to climb up a little bit more. So now seeing the chances of 26 degrees Celsius in the southeast and even 20 for central eastern areas of Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland. It's a trend that's going to continue throughout this week. The sunshine will become increasingly prolonged and temperatures are going to climb even further. Bye-bye.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. On Wednesday, the Chancellor outlined her spending plans, pledging to increase funding for schools, the National Health Service and Defence. But with the economy suffering from its worst contraction for a year and a half, economists are now warning that a failure to increase UK growth will almost certainly lead to more tax rises later this year. Is there any way for the government to balance the books and stick to its fully funded and fully costed commitment? Joining me now is economist Roger Bootle. Roger, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Very confusing, all the numbers we have to deal with here. Now, as I recall, taxes went up by about 40 billion. We now have this commitment to a lot of extra public spending. I'm not quite sure how much of that is annual and how much of it is cumulative. And then we have an issue with the rise in borrowing costs for the government. So how would you describe the bind, the pickle in which the Chancellor finds herself?
Dire, frankly. You mentioned earlier on the word inevitable, and I don't actually think it's very useful, that word. It's a word I don't like in economics. There is, in fact, a choice. She has a series of choices over this. Now, I happen to think that the outcome is probably going to be higher taxes, but that's not because there's some, God-given rule that taxes have to go up. It's because of choices that she's made. Now, the issues are, could she reasonably let borrowing rise above the rules that she's laid down? Could she fiddle around with the rules, as chancellors have done many times? She could do that, and there must be a great temptation to do so, I think. But frankly, the markets would hate that. I don't think that's a very viable choice. What economists like me would like to see her do was slash public spending. I don't think she's going to do that. So given all that, barring some really favourable outcome on the economy, which produces more tax revenue, and again, I don't think that's likely, then we come what's she left with? And the only thing she's left with is higher taxes.
Roger, tell us a little bit about the markets. For instance, where do the markets stand? Are they looking nervous? Where are borrowing costs in relation to where they were when Labour came into power? Where are borrowing costs in relation to where they were under Liz Truss during her 40 days?
Oh, gosh, I can't remember exactly what they were under Liz Truss. I can tell you about the atmosphere without being able to recall the precise numbers. I mean, we're nowhere near that, frankly, in terms of the mood of the market. Because what happened then was a complete breakdown in faith of the markets in the government. And it wasn't so much, by the way, the precise measures. The numbers sometimes don't tell you the full story. It was the manner of what happened. Dear old Kwasi Kwarteng, who I know you do, there was something about the bravura performance. He appeared, I can't remember which station it was on the Sunday morning after the initial announcements, and said something like, "You ain't seen nothing yet." So the general idea then was that, and of course the OBR was pushed into the long grass. It hadn't endorsed the plans, blah, blah. There were things about the way that was presented, which caused the markets to think, crikey, this looks horrendous. We're not there. What's different is, of course, the world environment is completely different. But in terms of the mood of the suspicion of the markets, it's nothing like as bad as it was during that Liz Truss moment.
But it is getting expensive to borrow, isn't it?
Yes, and since the OBR pronounced in March, it's got more expensive. Gilt yields have gone up, and interest rate expectations have gone up, and that's going to knock. Probably, this is constantly changing, of course, 4 or 5 billion off her scope. It's increased debt costs, interest costs by about 4 or 5 billion since March.
About a quarter of what the government's borrowed, I think, is in index-linked gilts. Therefore, if inflation goes up, the borrowing cost goes up.
Absolutely right. Now, I happened to be in favour at the time, a long time ago now, of the issuing of index-linked gilts. I thought it was a good move under the Thatcher government. And it has, I think, served us on the whole pretty well. But the result is now that it isn't easy to get out of this bind just by letting a bit of inflation race through the system, which was the classic prescription of many people if you would landed with a debt problem. What happens if you were to do that now is your debt interest on that index debt goes up quite substantially.
If the Chancellor felt she couldn't lose credibility by changing her borrowing rules, do you have a measure of how far short she is, how much she would have to increase taxes by to meet her new commitments to public spending?
I mean, there are umpteen different estimates of this.
Give us a range.
I will give you a range. I think it's wrong to be too precise because it depends on what happens to debt and interest, a whole series of things. I think it's something in the range 20 to 50 billion.
20 to 50 billion, and you're talking there about an annual figure. So,
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
For the coming year, for example, we would need 20 or 50 billion extra.
Well, so it gets complicated because the rules are framed in terms of a few years ahead. So she might be able to get away with not increasing by that amount in the first year.
Right.
But there are, of course, political reasons which you'll appreciate why you don't necessarily want to postpone all the pain for a few years' time. If you're going to do it, it might make sense to do it fairly soon. Something like that, I think, is the order of magnitude of what we face.
I mean, your answer is interesting because I think we all remember, we all have a feel for what 40 billion of extra taxes meant, because that's what we had last year, coming into effect, most of it this spring. So we can grasp that. And what you're saying is, your feeling is that she might well need another half of that, up to 100% of that, or indeed up to 125%
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Yeah. I mean, things have gone, not at all according to plan. Let's not forget that she came into office banging on about wanting faster economic growth. Growth was going to solve everything. But of course, we haven't got that. And the recent figures have been very disappointing. GDP figures, the monthly ones, a drop of 0.3. The employment figures bad. There seems to have been a failure to understand that if you put up taxes in the way she has, there's going to be a nasty economic consequence.
And do you see any signs in the Chancellor or any other ministers that they've grasped the importance of private enterprise, that they're willing to talk up business, that they're willing to discuss with business what stimulants business might benefit from? Do you feel that there's that sort of atmosphere in play?
No, I really don't. I can't really tell where she thinks growth is going to come from. I mean, there are some things. There's the housing market where there's been a relaxation of various restrictions, planning restrictions, and the government intends to be an awful lot more house building. One can see that just about. But apart from that, I don't see where they can honestly believe economic growth is going to come from. Now, of course, you could get lucky. It's possible on the world scene things will improve substantially. It's possible we'll have a fall in inflation, fall in commodity prices. You were talking earlier on about the Middle East. It's possible, I suppose, that will work out favourably. But this is not the way you can conduct a government, by hoping that something's going to turn up. If anything, I think the likelihood is that the international scene is going to get worse rather than better.
And to be clear-cut, Roger, does economic growth not come from higher public spending?
Well, as measured by the chaps in the statistical office, it can do, yes, because higher government spending on health service, education, whatever, is an output, leads to an output, and that's measured. But what that does to the overall prosperity and volume of activity in the country, well, it depends how much that's needed, what it contributes to productivity. And all the signs are it contributes, by and large, very little. We've got a massive problem of low productivity in the public sector in this country. Huge problem. Large numbers of people employed, number of civil servants having gone up dramatically since the pandemic, without there being any consummate increase in output. No, she's got to get the private sector of this country investing, hiring, increasing production. And whatever she's doing, I don't think it's directed towards that.
Thank you very much, Roger Bootle. I would say sobering and not exactly cheering. Thank you very much indeed.
Sorry about that.
Now, it's our biggest cash prize to date, and it could be yours. £54,321 is like having an extra £1,000 in your bank account each week for a year. What would you do with all that money? Well, here are the details of what you need to do to have the chance to make it yours.
The Great British Giveaway is now even greater, with your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally tax-free £54,321 cash could be yours. Cash that you could spend however you like. It's like having an extra £1,000 each week for a whole year to play with. Imagine what you could do with that. Someone is guaranteed to win this amazing amount of cash, so make sure that someone could be you. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Coming up, Test cricket is an exceptional sporting institution, testing teams to compete over 2 innings each, usually across 5 days. I was speaking to the author of the first narrative history of Test cricket, The Telegraph's Tim Wigmore. But first, if you're in search of some holiday sun, here are the forecasts for some top European destinations.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If it's heat you're after, then the Mediterranean is the place to be over this forthcoming week. We are going to be seeing temperatures climb over the next few days. Worth noting that that heat could spark off a few showers and thunderstorms in places, but generally there will be plentiful amounts of sunshine for many of these countries if you are heading out. The peak of the heat likely to be on Wednesday at this point, with inland areas in particular seeing 35 to 40 degrees Celsius.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
please bring us up to date.
Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Test cricket is on the cusp of its 150th anniversary. For the first time, a narrative history of the game has been written, documenting the players and stories that have shaped it, featuring exclusive interviews with the likes of Sachin Tendulkar, Pat Cummins and Kevin Peterson. Tim Wigmore's book emphasises the game's influence and significance around the world, and Tim Wigmore joins me now. I've read a lot of the book. It's a thick book. I haven't read absolutely all of it, but I really enjoyed it. It's very, very readable. Tell me about the unusualness, the uniqueness of the institution of Test cricket.
Well, the sheer fact you have a game that lasts for 5 days, we think of this as kind of anathema to, attention span nowadays. Actually, in 19th century, when Test cricket came about, first test in 1877, even then people were saying, this strange game that lasts multiple days, people are too busy. And so there's this almost existential quality to people who love Test cricket. They love worrying about it. So the first reference I could find to the game's not as good as it used to be. They all play for money nowadays, not the badge on the shirt. It was 1884, so that's been kind of wired into it. So there's this people who love Test cricket. They're so worried about its future, but actually, the fact it's 148 years old now, and it's lasted in many ways because it's kind of anti the kind of demands of the modern world, and it's a sense of being a escape from things, and just the kind of epic quality of it. You know, you have four innings in a match, 5 days, and I think the chance for redemption. A team can be completely down out, and for 3-4 days, and then you come from the end. I mean, I think, and also the idea of the second chance is baked into Test cricket, which is a lovely aspect of it.
Yes, I think that's very persuasive. Test matches have been tied. Were they the most exciting Test matches in your view?
So the first tied Test was at Brisbane in 1960, Australia against West Indies. That was a really incredible match because you not only have one of the great games with some of the best players of all time, Richie Benaud, Gary Sobers, and so on. You also have the extra layer, this was the first Test match in West Indies had a black captain, full-time Frank Worrell, and that was really had a wider significance in the independence movement in the Caribbean. So you have a kind of at the best Test cricket, you have not only great cricket, but you have this wider layer of social significance as well. So that would be, there's so many great ones we can always talk about. Headingley 81, 2019, those two England Ashes miracles. Also think Kolkata 2001, so when India are 274 behind against Australia, completely down and out against maybe the best team of all time, when they go from the dead to win, and then that also sets India onto a new era. One of the odd things in the book actually was how bad India were for so long, and then there's been such a transformation so far this century.
I think this would be a different answer. What was the best series?
Best series?
One where it swung from side to side.
Yeah, there's a
doubt to the end.
There's a lot of 1960, this Australia-West Indies series 60-61, which goes down to the last Test. Australia win by 2 wickets. Then you have 500,000 people in Melbourne come out to thank West Indies, salute them. That would be up there. I think this India-Australia series 2001. The Ashes is a funny thing because we get these kind of all these nearly great series, which ends up like the last series 2023 would have been great to have 2-2 into the decider, but then was rain in Manchester, as there always is, and it ruined it. So I think to have a great series, you need so many things to be all come to get together in a perfect way. And I suppose Test cricket as well. There's a lot. There are bad matches, which are sort of the price you pay for the good ones, and they elevate the good ones because, like T20 is designed basically to have a very close finish because with 20 overs aside, there's less time for sides to put away from each other. But Test cricket, actually, the best side you really should win. So when you have these really close finishes, they're elevated actually by how rare they are, and we've obviously been very lucky last few years with the England team playing some very exciting cricket.
Tell me briefly about that very controversial tour, the Bodyline Tour. This was about a batsman called Bradman.
Yeah, so Don Bradman, statistically, maybe the best sportsman in any sport. Here his average is 99.94. The next best is 61. So he is like 40% better than the competition. So England try and devise a way to stop him, and their answer is basically to bowl it short and into his body, into his neck, into his head. This is, of course, 50 years before we have helmets, so that the physical threat is very, very real. And England, they managed to win the Ashes, but they cause a huge... they injure several Australian players. There's all these sort of... These discussions about, is the tour going to halt? Australia accusing them of being unsportsmanship, which, of course, to England is the biggest slur imaginable. So they win the Ashes 4-1 in that series, but it causes these huge fractures in the game and kind of in the empire more broadly. And we do see again and again, this strange game, it does have a significance well beyond the pitch.
Would you like to pick up your book and show it to the camera? It's called then Test Cricket, A History by Tim Wigmore, and it's the first narrative history of Test cricket. Thank you very much. Jolly good read. Thank you, Tim Wigmore. That concludes the first hour of Sunday with Michael Portillo, but please do stay tuned. My panel will return at noon to discuss whether Israel's killings of targeted enemies is morally justified. We'll debate the less than divine revelation that Michelangelo hated painting the Sistine Chapel. We'll also hear how the 200th anniversary of the opening of the Stockton and Darlington Railway will be celebrated with diesel locomotives. And to fathers could be amongst the many toasts that I will make on this Father's Day as I sample some Welsh whiskey at the end of the programme. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, this is your latest GB News weather updates provided by the Met Office. It is a slightly mixed picture for this second half of the weekend. We do have high pressure building in from the south, keeping many of us fine and settled, but there's also this weather front just slipping its way into the northwest of the UK, and it's already been providing more in the way of clouds, some outbreaks of light rain as well. It's going to continue its journey south and eastward, so we'll eventually arrive into parts of northwest England and Wales later on today. Can't rule out the odd sharp shower for some central southeastern areas of England, but in general it is this southeastern quadrant of the UK that's going to hold on to the best of the sunshine. Generally less humid compared to some recent days, but still pleasantly warm in that sunshine, has a 23-24 degrees Celsius. More around high teens where we have that cloud, but once the main band pushes its way through, there will be some sunny spells emerging for Northern Ireland and particularly eastern Scotland as we do head later on in the afternoon and the evening. Our next area of rain, though, is going to be steadily moving its way into western Scotland as we head into the overnight period. This one coming with a slightly freshening breeze, a brisk around some coastal regions, and it will eventually turn heavy over some of the hills and the mountains across northwestern Scotland. Everywhere else, though, should stay largely dry tonight with some clear spells. A few mist and fog patches forming, particularly across the south and the west, but otherwise fairly mild with temperatures holding up around 10 to 15 degrees Celsius. The rain will be on and off throughout the day on Monday for northwestern Scotland, so quite damp here, and again still with that brisk wind around at times. But elsewhere it'll be a fairly pleasant start to the new working week, some sunny spells emerging for most of us, and temperatures actually beginning to climb up a little bit more. So now seeing the chances of 26 degrees Celsius in the southeast and even 20 for central eastern areas of Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland. It's a trend that's going to continue throughout this week. The sunshine will become increasingly prolonged and temperatures are going to climb even further. Bye-bye.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine having an extra £1,000 to spend each week for an entire year. £54,321 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to spend however you like. £54,321 in cash could be landing in your bank account this year. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're
the failure
deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. In his poem, Ho, Everyone That Thirsteth, A.E. Houseman writes, June suns, you cannot store them to warm the winter's cold. How profound. After a beautiful week of warm sunshine, you are welcome, dear viewers, to the second hour of Sunday with Michael Portillo for more discussion on the arts, politics and current affairs. Is the targeted killing of enemies morally justified? As tensions rise between Israel and Iran, I'll ask my panel whether those targeted assassinations should be regarded as murder or as a means to reduce casualties amongst the innocent. Did Michelangelo hate painting the Sistine Chapel? That's what one historian has claimed this week. Alexander Mariotti, live from Rome, will give his view on this controversial revelation. As 2025 marks 200 years since the dawn of Britain's railways, I'll find out how North Yorkshire is celebrating the anniversary. And I'll mark Father's Day by raising a toast with some Welsh whiskey, all the way from Penderyn Distillery in the Brecon Beacons. But first, your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Michael, thank you, and a very good afternoon to you. Fast approaching 2 minutes past midday. The top story, Sir Keir Starmer has announced a full statutory inquiry into grooming gangs following a damning audit by Baroness Louise Casey. The Prime Minister said he had accepted her recommendation for a national investigation into group-based child sexual abuse across England and Wales. The inquiry will have legal powers to compel evidence and testimony and will coordinate targeted local investigations, even where councils object. Sir Keir Starmer said he read every word of Casey's report and now believed a fresh inquiry was the right thing to do. It's a major shift for the government, which earlier this year resisted calls for a national probe despite pressure from victims, opposition MPs and even figures like Elon Musk. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper will give a common statement on Monday, with Casey's full report expected to also be published this coming week. Well, breaking news just in the last few minutes. We were expecting it, and it has now been confirmed that the UK government is advising against all travel to Israel due to the escalating conflict there with Iran. The Foreign Office has now updated its guidance, warning of a risk of further escalation. Anyone already in Israel is also being urged to follow local advice, and in addition to both being in Israel, the occupied territories too. So that confirmation from the Foreign Office updating guidance, now advising against all travel to Israel. That is, of course, after fresh strikes on Iranian nuclear sites, officials in Tehran threatening a more severe response if they continue. Israeli emergency services have also said at least 10 people are now known to have died and over 100 injured. The attacks come just as Iran and the US were due to resume nuclear talks today, but those talks have now been cancelled, according to mediators in Oman. Well, meanwhile, the G7 summit in Canada is now being overshadowed by that escalating conflict. Leaders had planned to focus on trade, energy security and Russia's war in Ukraine. But the strikes from Israel on Iran are now centre stage. Sir Keir Starmer and France's Emmanuel Macron have called for restraint, but Japan has condemned Israel's actions, while President Donald Trump has praised them. And our political editor Chris Hope is in Canada for us. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
The G7 in Canada is all back to the world stage. He said overnight to us that Canada is an independent and sovereign country and a much valued member of the Commonwealth. That needs to be said because Donald Trump covets this country as the 51st state of the United States of America. And over all that, the big issue here for the world leaders is what's happening in Iran and Israel. Overnight, the UK has sent RAF Typhoons to protect assets in the Middle East. It is getting very, very tense on a global stage, and that will dominate the G7 when it starts in earnest tomorrow.
It comes as more military jets from Britain are being sent to the Middle East amid the intensifying conflict. Sir Keir Starmer has confirmed Typhoons and air-to-air refuelling aircraft have been deployed as contingency support across the region. But he has stressed the UK's message remains focused on de-escalation. The Prime Minister wouldn't be drawn on whether UK jets could help defend Israel, but said the government recognises Israel's right to self-defence and has a long-standing concern about Iran's nuclear ambitions. In India, the death toll from Thursday's plane crash has now risen to 270, according to doctors at Ahmedabad's main hospital. The London-bound Air India flight came down seconds after takeoff, crashing into a residential building. Only one person, a 40-year-old British man, is confirmed to have survived. Officials are still working to identify victims and confirm just how many people were also killed on the ground. A black box has been recovered, and investigators from India and the UK and US are now examining what went wrong. And in some lighter and brighter news, the Prince and Princess of Wales have released these two new photos of Prince William with his children George, Charlotte and Louis to mark Father's Day. One shows them lying on the grass in a black and white cuddle, and the other a portrait with William's arms around his children, along with a caption saying, "Happy Father's Day, Papa, we love you." The pictures were both taken by photographer Josh Shiner, the same man behind the family's 2023 Christmas card. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you in around half an hour. Now, though, it's over to Michael.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sam Francis. Now, in recent days, Israel assassinated senior Iranian figures, targeting military commanders and nuclear scientists. Should these killings be regarded as extrajudicial, or are they justified by Iran's ambition to eliminate Israel? Are they an efficient tool of warfare that punishes the main actors and undermines enemy morale? Does eliminating the top brass make it possible to reduce mass casualties? Just briefly, it has been confirmed, you heard, that the Foreign Office has updated its advice against all travel to Israel while the conflict with Iran continues. Joining me again, my panel, Opinions and Features Editor at City AM, Alice Denby, former Conservative Advisor Jennifer Powers, and former Labour aide Matthew Lazar. Jennifer, what's your reaction to this ethical and moral dilemma?
Well, I think that the remote targeted killing in war has been a really politicized issue since the first drone strike by the US in Yemen back in 2002. And whilst that's relatively new, we're only talking about the last 20-odd years, these arguments about just war go back thousands of years. I suppose we could talk about Cicero and the Roman Republic if you wanted to, but it's just ad bellum and just in bellum in terms of those two principles of, is the resort to war justified and is the conduct of the war justified? Mm-hmm. And I suppose it's those principles which inform this discussion this morning, but also more generally around, is it a last resort for Israel? Are they justified in actually undertaking these targeted assassinations of the commanders and of the scientists, and it's the way they're doing it. Is it avoiding civilian casualties as much as possible, and are these killings proportionate to the risk that Israel would face? And
those are indeed the questions.
Those are the questions.
Now, and what are the answers?
Well, I think what we have to remember is that Israel and Iran have been at war since 1979. Interestingly, before the revolution, there was a bit of partnership, covert, clandestine partnership, but they shared military intelligence, they did arms for oil, there was lots going on behind the scenes. And when the Iranian Revolution happened, that all stopped, and the destruction of Israel became fundamental ideology of the Iranian regime. And so we've had the proxy wars in the Middle East for the last 4 decades with Hezbollah and Hamas, and more recently Yemen and the Houthis. And so the two sides have been at war for a very long time. And so I think I would argue that Israel is justified in looking to protect itself from what could be an existential threat when Iran realized its goal of achieving nuclear weapons. And it's very interesting that a lot of the countries in the Middle East have been very quiet over the last few days because they too are very concerned about a Middle East dominated by a nuclear Iran.
Jennifer thinks it could be justified. Alice?
I think targeted killings are clearly justified. I think it was clearly justified to kill Osama bin Laden, for example, Jihadi John. I think that if it is true that Iran was on the brink of having a nuclear weapon, which seems like it massively was. I mean, why has it got all this enriched uranium underground if it's not covertly trying to create a nuclear weapon? Then targeted killings like this, I think, could avert a much bigger moral disaster, which would be a nuclear weaponized tyrannical theocratic regime in Iran. So I think that this obviously can be justified. I think Jennifer rightly outlines the questions on this particular these particular killings. I suppose I would feel more comfortable if it was focused on military targets rather than nuclear scientists, civilians. But I think, as Jennifer said, I think the questions are: was it credible that Iran was about to have a nuclear weapon? And is Israel justified more broadly in its conduct of this war?
So let's give you some other instances. I mean, do you think Putin would be justified in assassinating Zelensky?
No.
Would Zelensky be justified in assassinating Putin?
I think if Putin were to be assassinated, I think a lot of us would breathe a sigh of relief.
OK. Would Iran be justified in assassinating Netanyahu?
No.
Why?
Because Netanyahu is a democratically elected politician, and Israel has every right to exist and to choose its own leaders. Iran, on the other hand, is a theocratic dictatorship.
So some of this, at least, has to do with legitimacy?
I believe so, yeah.
Matthew, where do you stand?
So, I think in principle, I'm not against the extrajudicial killings. I think that they can be, they clearly have their uses. Nobody wanted Osama bin Laden to carry on this earth. But I think it's about getting the balance right about what the consequences of those killings will be and the context in which they take place. I mean, there's a chap called Noel Mason McFarlane, who is the British military attaché in Berlin in 1939, and he had a plan to shoot Hitler from his window. He was either prepared to do it himself if necessary, because he was literally going to be on a raised platform within sight lines of that. And the sort of, his request went back to London, and London obviously panicked, said no, said, oh, this could lead to a war. His argument was, you're going to have a war. There's going to be a war anyway.
This was pre-39.
It's pre-39. It's early in 39. The very early in 39, apparently.
Yeah.
And so before war was declared, 9 months before war was declared. So the issue, the decision then was, are the consequences of what would seem, nobody particularly likes Hitler. Let's get him out of the way. Oh, yes, but this is going to lead to a world war. Well, we saw a world war happen just a few months later. Anyway, would it have been better to have done it then? Would the German people have risen up against Hitler? And actually, we've got an echo of that today, because Netanyahu has done this message to the Iranian people where he's calling for them to rise up against the leadership. However, of course, if there's one person who's telling the Iranian people to do that, it means they're not going to do it. It's Benjamin Netanyahu. So it's all, to me, about the context, the way it's done, and what your plan is for what happens after you've done it.
I think a couple of you, I'll stick with you, Matthew, I think a couple of you have mentioned Osama bin Laden. Would there be a distinction here? It seemed to me Osama bin Laden was executed effectively for what he had done. I'm not sure that he posed a particular threat at the time that he was killed. So this was revenge, or this was justice. The Israeli cases here in Iran are rather different. People are being eliminated who could be very useful to Iran in its stated objective of annihilating Israel. There's a distinction there, isn't there?
Yes, but as you just asked the question about would Iran be justified in doing it in reverse, and, you know, I'm not an Iranian and, you know, I don't support the Iranian regime, but if you were an Iranian, you might say, well, getting rid of Benjamin Netanyahu because it would be fine because he poses an existential threat to the future of my country. So I think it's about the context, and it's about having a coalition of support to do it. I think that the issue with the moment is, you know, Netanyahu is literally fighting on two fronts, and he's also fighting for his political life. I looked up the polls this morning, and he's significantly, his coalition is significantly behind the opposition coalition in Israel if there's an election tomorrow. So I fear this is about Israeli politics and not about what's best for the Middle East and the world.
Jennifer, you've worked in 10 Downing Street, so it must be possible for you to imagine yourself being in political power.
Oh.
Can you imagine yourself taking this decision? By the way, it's not impossible that a British Prime Minister will be asked to make a decision about killing someone who was deemed to be an enemy of the state. Can you imagine yourself taking that decision? And if so, what would your considerations be?
Oh, my goodness. I think the chances of me being in political power in this country are vanishingly small. But I do take your point that Matthew's point that it depends on context, and your point that there are different types of these killings. So what
would be needed to satisfy you, Prime Minister?
I think with someone like Osama bin Laden, that was part of a counter-terrorism strategy. So that was not dealing with a state at war. That was an individual who's been assassinated as part of a counter-terrorism strategy. And in a case like that, you know, it seems pretty clear-cut because there had been so much of a time lead-up and so much evidence in terms of his implication. On
Let me make it easier for you. Can you imagine yourself saying yes? Can you imagine yourself signing the bit of paper in some circumstances?
Yes, I mean, however, I don't think I would ever be in that position, but we're in that position. Obviously, it comes as a responsibility of being in power.
It's not
and therefore
totally
you have to
morally repugnant to you.
I think it completely depends the context. And when we're talking today about Iran and Israel, I mean, that's a very different context. And there we're talking about just war. And it is a state versus a state. And Israel has not taken out the non-elected leader of Iran. They have taken out, to my understanding, members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Those are commanders. And scientists, which I'm not sure if they're fully civilian, because they are part of the political industrial complex that is looking to build nuclear weapons.
Alice, would you sign the bit of paper if required?
Yes, if it would save British lives.
So now, we didn't really discuss this, but you see, I thought one of the arguments you might make was that killing a few nuclear scientists, killing commanders in Iran, might save lives down the track. Do you think that could be a reasonable argument?
Yes, I think if you're preventing a nuclear conflict, if you're preventing, as I say, a despotic death cult regime from getting a nuclear weapon, then I think that the lesser evil of taking out a few individuals that could prevent that escalation is morally justifiable. And if I was in a position and I thought that I was preventing a much greater evil, then I think it would be morally justified to sign that order.
Matthew, if the Israelis decide to take out the supreme leader, I mean, it rather looks as though they can take out who they want. They seem to have penetrated intelligence to that extent. Where would the moral position be there?
Well, I think the issue would be that the moral consequences of that would be that, you know, Iran would basically, up the ante against Israel itself, and that would threaten the very existence of Israel, which would...
Those are practical consequences.
Yeah, I mean, you know, morally, I think it is very hard to take out the leader of a country. I mean, on terrorism, you asked about whether a British minister would do it. Well, of course, whether it was ministers who signed it off or whether it was other agents of the state, but in Northern Ireland, it was pretty clear that there were extrajudicial killings done in the name of the British state by the British state, some of them by the British state and some of them with the tacit support of the British state. Now, that, you know, we can argue whether that's right or wrong, but we've done it. I don't think ultimately they were particularly productive in what they achieved, and we're still living with the consequences of it. But that was, as you say, terrorism like bin Laden. I think when it's the head of a state, it becomes very difficult. But then, if our nice British chap had shot Hitler, literally millions of lives would have been saved. So, I mean, it is, you know, a moral dilemma that all of us wrestle with. But I think it probably would be the wrong thing to do to take out the supreme leader.
It's been fascinating to watch you wrestling with that moral dilemma. Thank you very much indeed, panel. Alice Tenby, Jennifer Powers and Matthew Lazar. Coming up, was Michelangelo's famous Sistine Chapel ceiling born out of punishment? I'll find out why that may have been the case with the leading historian. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo only on GB News.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Vegetarians now have a greater desire to wield power more than their meat-eating counterparts. I mean, you like a sausage, don't you, Biggins?
I like a sausage, but I have gone off meat per se, funnily enough, as I'm getting older. I think there are, it takes a lot of eating a piece of meat, if you pardon the expression.
And the older you get, the more you find that it takes a lot of meat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I must admit, I have more of a conscience about eating meat as I get older.
Yeah.
And that's a fondness of animals brings that. And if you ever go on Instagram and you look at cows and horses and pigs,
they're wonderful
they're all
things.
affectionate and
know,
incredible.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
And there we are, putting it into our mouths and eating it.
What do you think about the move to enforce vegetarianism on people, though? Because especially in schools and some universities, there's this trend for meat-free Monday, where there's this enforced absence of meat on children.
I think it's ridiculous. Let kids do what they want, to be honest with. Within reason, obviously, a healthy diet, da-da-da-da-da. But no, I think, look, I don't eat meat, the husband eats meat. It's not an issue. Eat what you want. But I think that the fact that they're trying to force this into schools, look, let kids experiment, give them a vegetarian option.
Yes,
let
yeah,
them
I know
see
schools do that.
Just options.
It has just become political, and also there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I know children are often told that eating meat is terrible for the environment, but importing avocados thousands of miles is also terrible for the environment.
But also, I mean, a lot of vegetarian meals, certainly processed vegetarian meals, have got a load of salt and fat and sugar in them, so they're actually worse for you than eating a lean piece of meat.
I think the tide is turning now, because the new trend amongst young people, particularly young men, is protein. Chicken, breasts, tuna. That's the new trend, to get as much protein in them as possible. It's very difficult to do when you're vegetarian.
GB News, the People's Channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. An American historian has claimed this week that Michelangelo never wanted to paint the stupid Sistine Chapel. Ada Palmer said that the artist loathed painting and wanted to sculpt instead. She went on to claim that Michelangelo was forced to paint the ceiling of the chapel in the Vatican by stalker Pope Julius II, who wanted to punish him for trying to flee the Italian capital. Joining me now is the ancient Rome historian, Alexander Mariotti. Alexander, welcome to GB News. Great to speak to you.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
Shall we begin by talking about the stage of his career that Michelangelo had reached at this point? As I understand it, he was very brilliant, very young. By about the age of 30, he's already sculpted the Pietà and the David, which are so familiar to us. And he's done that, I think, in Florence, is that right? But there's now a period of his life where he's in Rome.
Yes, absolutely correct. He, at that point, had already distinguished his name for being an incredible sculptor. I think when you look at his work, it's very easy to see when you compare it to what came before, that he was a revolutionary when it came to art. His understanding of the human body was impeccable, and was down to a little gray area, which was actually cutting corpses. Cutting corpses was not really permitted at the time. It was a little bit of a gray area, but he managed to do it. And we know that because he understands the human body so perfectly that he quite literally transforms marble into flesh. In fact, in Rome, there's a small church right in the center, which has a lost Michelangelo, or at least it was lost. It's the only Michelangelo you can get close to. And when you get close to it, you'll notice that the way the texture, the light catches the skin or the texture of it, it doesn't look like marble. It quite literally looks like flesh. So he was an established sculptor. He'd never painted. So the question is, why is he painting?
And what is your answer to that? What do you make of this allegation that's been made? Firstly, that it was heaped upon him by the Pope. And secondly, that it was about holding him in Rome and punishing him for wanting to go away, and that he was being deliberately made to work in a medium that was not his first choice.
It's absolutely true. I've had the pleasure of working in the secret archives of the Vatican. I've read some incredible documents and letters by Michelangelo. And the Sistine Chapel itself tells you this. The story that you're given when you go through the Vatican museums is a very sugar-coated, sort of Hollywood-esque version of history. The truth is that Michelangelo was not punished. He was really set up. I mean, again, you look at all that period of history, you've got some of the most incredible painters. The Sistine Chapel has been painted by Botticelli, by Ghirlandaio, by Signorelli, by the greats of a period. Why are they getting some sculptor at a period when you've got so many painters to paint it again? And the answer is yes, he is being set up. But there's a little, pardon me, there's the ambulance is passing here. There's a little side quest here, which is that Bramante, who was a very established architect and friend of the Pope, was uncle to the artist Raphael. So his intent was that Michelangelo, so braggadocious, so arrogant, would be forced to paint the Sistine Chapel, clearly make a mess, because, of course, there's no ways he can do a good job. And then who's going to come and save the day? Raphael. But what happens is it backfires tremendously, because what makes the Sistine Chapel so good, and I'm sure you've seen it yourself, I have a little admission to make, which is that my mother's an artist, and she pushed me to go see it. And when I first saw the Sistine Chapel, I didn't like it. I felt I was supposed to like it, but I didn't. And I've come in recent years after, working with the Vatican so many years and being able to read the documents, to appreciate it for what it is. It was amazing because it was a painting done by a sculptor. So if you look at it carefully, there are no great landscapes, there's no great backgrounds. And when you walk to the Sistine Chapel, you're forced to look at all the art before, and you have these very contrived pictures where people clearly pose. They're all these very easy poses, and then you get to the Sistine Chapel, and all of a sudden you've got people, bodybuilders essentially, flying through the air, touching fingers, and people had never seen something like that. So the key to the Sistine Chapel is not that it's incredibly beautiful, is that it was incredibly different, and that's because a sculptor is painting.
Now, as I understand it, luckily, Michelangelo fought back a bit, because he was I think he was handed an idea, a commission, a design that he was supposed to follow. And he said, no, please allow me to follow my own design, to go with my own ideas. And that is what produced the extraordinary originality that you've just referred to.
Yes, well, I mean, he actually refused it. That's the thing about the Sistine Chapel. So when he was the Pope essentially told him, I mean, it's the Pope, he doesn't have any choice. When he's forced to do it, he tells him, I am a sculptor, not a painter. He refuses to. And the Pope, this whole idea of him punishing him, it makes perfect sense, because he makes it even harder for Michelangelo. So first of all, he tells him that the Sistine Chapel is going to be in use whilst he's painting. I mean, that's unheard of. How can the chapel be active when somebody's there painting? So Michelangelo had to essentially invent a sliding platform, if you will, that allowed the chapel to be in use. And in the initial phase, the chapel was open, and then he had to cover it because the Pope kept saying, I don't like that, change this, change that. And of course, for somebody like Michelangelo, who already doesn't want to be there, he's, in his opinion, wasting good sculpting years, eventually covers it. And about halfway through the painting, they get into a quite sort of vicious argument, and there's rumors that the Pope struck him. And Michelangelo left and went to Florence. Now, if you go to Florence, there's a secret Michelangelo room. It's very hard to get into, but if you can, it's wonderful. And it's filled with charcoal drawings by Michelangelo, because anytime the Pope's agents would come to try and retrieve him, he would hide in this hiding place, and he would just pass the time sketching. So you can still visit it. And what happened was Michelangelo left. They said, well, that's it. Let's pull the Sistine Chapel down. But when the scaffolding came down and they were about to scrape it, the Pope, who, of course, his residency is on the other side of the Sistine Chapel, he sees it. And what he sees, again, is not so tremendously beautiful. It's so tremendously different that he realizes Michelangelo's to come back. Problem is, Michelangelo refuses, and eventually the Pope said to the Florentines, I will burn your city down unless you send him. So, of course, they sent him back. He finished it, and the rest is history, as they say.
What a fantastic story. I'm so very pleased that we followed this story up and spoke to you, Alexander Mariotti. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. An absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Now, our biggest cash prize to date, and it could be yours, £54,321, is like having an extra £1,000 in your bank account each week for a year. What would you do with all that money? Well, here are the details for the chance to make it all yours.
The Great British Giveaway is now even greater, with your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally tax-free £54,321 cash could be yours. Cash that you could spend however you like. It's like having an extra £1,000 each week for a whole year to play with. Imagine what you could do with that. Someone is guaranteed to win this amazing amount of cash, so make sure that someone could be you. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Coming up, I'll be speaking to Charlie Peters about the announcement last night of that National Statutory Inquiry into the rape gangs. Plus, I'll find out how the legacy of diesel locomotives is being celebrated in North Yorkshire around the 200th anniversary of the locomotive-hauled passenger railway. But first, more news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. Just after 12:30, the top story. Well, it is breaking news. The Foreign Office has said do not travel to Israel under any circumstances. That message from the government this afternoon as it updates its advice, warning the conflict with Iran could escalate fast, with air links already disrupted and missiles intercepted over Israel and the Palestinian territories. Travellers are being told that ignoring the advice could void their insurance, and to report any falling debris or missile fragments to local authorities. It comes as Israel launches fresh strikes on Iranian nuclear sites, with at least 10 killed and over 100 injured. Iran is threatening more severe responses, and planned nuclear talks with the US have now been cancelled. More British military jets are also being sent to the Middle East amid the intensifying conflict. Sir Keir Starmer confirmed Typhoons and air-to-air refuelling aircraft have been deployed as contingency support across the region. But he stressed the UK's message remains focused on de-escalation. The Prime Minister wouldn't be drawn on whether UK jets could help defend Israel, but said the government recognises Israel's right to self-defence and has long-standing concerns about Iran's nuclear ambitions. A leading child protection charity has welcomed Sir Keir Starmer's decision to launch a national statutory inquiry into grooming gangs, but warned action must not be delayed. The NSPCC says it's pleased the Prime Minister has accepted the recommendation of Baroness Casey's review, but urges the government not to lose time tackling child sexual abuse. Its chief executive says survivors have already waited too long since the findings of the 2022 independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, which exposed institutional failings and called the scale of abuse an epidemic. Sir Keir says he's read every single word of the report and believes launching the inquiry is the right thing to do. Well, the move has been praised as a welcome U-turn by Nigel Farage, but met with criticism from the Tory leader Kemi Badenoch, who says the Prime Minister should apologise for 6 wasted months. The Prince and Princess of Wales have released 2 new photos of Prince William with George, Charlotte and Louis to mark Father's Day. One shows them lying on the grass in a black and white cuddle, the other a portrait with William's arms around his children, alongside a caption that says, "Happy Father's Day, Papa, we love you." Well, the pictures were taken by photographer Josh Shiner, the same man behind the family's 2023 Christmas card. Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you for the news at 1, and Michael will be back after this.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello there, this is your latest GB News weather updates provided by the Met Office. It is a slightly mixed picture for this second half of the weekend. We do have high pressure building in from the south, keeping many of us fine and settled, but there's also this weather front just slipping its way into the northwest of the UK, and it's already been providing more in the way of clouds, some outbreaks of light rain as well. It's going to continue its journey south and eastward, so we'll eventually arrive into parts of northwest England and Wales later on today. Can't rule out the odd sharp shower for some central southeastern areas of England, but in general it is this southeastern quadrant of the UK that's going to hold on to the best of the sunshine. Generally less humid compared to some recent days, but still pleasantly warm in that sunshine, has a 23-24 degrees Celsius. More around high teens where we have that cloud, but once the main band pushes its way through, there will be some sunny spells emerging for Northern Ireland and particularly eastern Scotland as we do head later on in the afternoon and the evening. Our next area of rain, though, is going to be steadily moving its way into western Scotland as we head into the overnight period. This one coming with a slightly freshening breeze, a brisk around some coastal regions, and it will eventually turn heavy over some of the hills and the mountains across northwestern Scotland. Everywhere else, though, should stay largely dry tonight with some clear spells. A few mist and fog patches forming, particularly across the south and the west, but otherwise fairly mild with temperatures holding up around 10 to 15 degrees Celsius. The rain will be on and off throughout the day on Monday for northwestern Scotland, so quite damp here, and again still with that brisk wind around at times. But elsewhere it'll be a fairly pleasant start to the new working week, some sunny spells emerging for most of us, and temperatures actually beginning to climb up a little bit more. So now seeing the chances of 26 degrees Celsius in the southeast and even 20 for central eastern areas of Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland. It's a trend that's going to continue throughout this week. The sunshine will become increasingly prolonged and temperatures are going to climb even further. Bye-bye.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Last night, as we've been hearing, the Prime Minister announced that there will be a national statutory inquiry into the rape gang scandal. Let's get a quick update now with GB News national reporter Charlie Peters. Charlie, it occurs to me that if Labour has resisted for so long setting up a national inquiry, there must be some people today who are not going to be very happy about this. I mean, there may have been Labour backbenchers who believed the Prime Minister when he said those calling for a national inquiry are jumping on a right-wing bandwagon. So what is the consequence for those backbenchers of this reversal of policy?
Yes, on our website today, our digital team have been numbering the various Labour MPs who did say that this was a far-right cause, or who said that those getting involved in calls for a national inquiry were doing the wrong thing, not just politically different to them. So I think there will be some backlash among sections of the Labour Party, but perhaps privately, because when they announced in January that there would be a set of local inquiries in reaction to the 2 weeks of public pressure on this issue sparked by our reporting that they'd rejected a request for a review in Oldham, those 5 local inquiries were then turned into locally led work in April, with Jess Phillips, the Safeguarding Minister, making an update to the House just before Easter recess. And she said she made that decision. The government had changed it from local inquiries to local work after taking feedback from local authorities. We can assume, I think, with a high degree of confidence that many of those local authorities that gave that feedback, saying we don't need inquiries, were Labour-led authorities. And I think that private concern would have driven that decision. And what will happen on a national scale? Will there be that national level of private backlash? It'll be an interesting question to investigate, because I think a lot of Labour MPs would have been excited by this announcement. There are more Labour MPs, I think, who were quiet about this, didn't want to speak up in favour of it because it would go against the leadership. And so they could also be coming forward as well.
But is it too crude to say that Labour was worried about announcing a national inquiry because it has quite a large Muslim vote, has a lot of Muslim councillors, and these people might be unhappy with this, and indeed they might head off towards sectarian political alternatives?
Well, the Labour Party has always rejected that criticism when it has been made of them, and it was made regularly in April when there was that so-called watering down of their proposals, which the Conservatives accused them of at the time. However, I think it's pretty clear to most people that this is a tricky issue for Labour to engage with, because the perpetrators are overwhelmingly from Pakistani heritage backgrounds, and that is a major voter base for the party. This involves setting up investigations that will undoubtedly reveal cover-ups and abuse within networks that they traditionally rely on for support and have given the party great electoral opportunities. Now, they will say that there's absolutely no chance that they've been involved in weakening their interest to protect children in order to facilitate political ambition. But at the same time, a lot of the opposition they would have had in local areas, I think undoubtedly would have come from their own representatives and supporters.
Quick response to the following. Did the Labour government sanction Israeli ministers last year because of its Muslim voters?
I can't be sure. I can't be sure on that. Not really my remit, that one.
Well, I think that is a wise answer to give in the circumstances. Thank you very much indeed, Charlie Peters. Moving on, this year marks 200 years since the opening of the Stockton and Darlington Railway. In North Yorkshire, they're celebrating the legacy of diesel locomotives. Our reporter Anna Riley has the story.
Showcasing Britain's diesel locomotive heritage, the North Yorkshire Moors Railway Diesel Gala transports visitors back in time.
They're all locos from, the UK, and we've got ones from different regions and different periods, earlier ones, later ones. So it does give that mix of, that sort of typical British traction that we had in the sort of 60s, 70s, 80s and through to the 90s. In fact, some of them are still, odd ones are still running,
The whole of the heritage railway movement still runs on Victorian in the steam engine era, or 1950s and 60s technology, what we've got behind us. So, they're knocking on granddads themselves, these machines.
The famous Class 55 Deltics are known for their power and ability to haul trains at high speeds. Here, the Alcedon drew the most crowds.
Originally, the Deltic Preservation Society was formed in 1977 to preserve the iconic Class 55 Deltics from British Rail. They finally bought two in 1982, including this one behind us. They were decommissioned basically due to the iconic HSTs coming in, high-speed trains. So in 1982 they were taken out of service. It shows everyone a bit of history really, because this one's mainline registered, so when it's ready to go onto the main line, it can go back onto the main line between London and Edinburgh.
The sights and sounds of these diesel engines is nostalgic for some and new to others.
A lot of people nowadays don't remember the steam engines running, whereas these diesel engines, a lot of people will remember them from their childhoods. It's nice to keep them going. These engines helped build Britain, so it's nice to keep a bit of that past alive.
When privatisation came in, all our favourite diesel classes, they sort of dripped away, so it's great to come to diesel galas and relive all the past times.
Well, it's part of British heritage, isn't it? It's a really important part of our culture. It's important for the country to keep proper British engineering alive.
I just love the fact that it's old. It's old stuff, it's our heritage.
Celebrating the legacy of diesel trains, this gala is on track to be a memorable one. Anna Riley, GB News, Gromont.
Yes, thank you, Anna Riley. As I've discovered, there's a big market in railway nostalgia. Now, it's time for our daily reflection with Marcus Mack.
The GB News Daily Reflection.
Welcome to St. Michael's Church in New Haven. My name is Marcus Mack. A little boy longed to spend time with his father, who always came home late after dinner. The boy asked, "How much do you make an hour?" Irritated, the father said, "If you must know, I make £30 an hour." "Can I borrow £15, please?" the little boy requested. The father was furious, assuming an ulterior motive was behind the question, and told his son to go straight to bed. Realizing how harsh he was, the father apologized and gave his son £15. Delighted, the son then took out another £15 and said, "Can I buy an hour of your time? Please come home early so we can have dinner together." This story highlights the father hunger we all have and the importance of a present father. Today is Father's Day. Fathers and fatherly figures are a wonderful gift to children and to society. They play a distinct and essential role that no one else can fulfill. Whether today is a day of celebrating or grieving, know this: within the Christian faith, Jesus the Son invites us to know God not as servants, but as a father, and experience his love by the Spirit. Through Jesus, we can become children of God and know the perfect and parental providence of the Father, who will never abandon us and who helps fathers and men become the men we were made to be. If you are doing the best you can as a father, keep up the great work. If you have struggled to be the father you were made to be, it is never too late.
It is indeed Father's Day, and I will shortly raise a paternal toast in Welsh whiskey. But first, if you're in search of holiday sun, here are the forecasts for some of the top European destinations.
Be nice to escape the grey.
Clear skies, here we come.
As clear as our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
If it's heat you're after, then the Mediterranean is the place to be over this forthcoming week. We are going to be seeing temperatures climb over the next few days. Worth noting that that heat could spark off a few showers and thunderstorms in places, but generally there will be plentiful amounts of sunshine for many of these countries if you are heading out. The peak of the heat likely to be on Wednesday at this point, for inland areas in particular, seeing 35 to 40 degrees Celsius.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Camilla Tominey. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
And Tom, look what I received this morning.
This is so sweet. Oh!
Isn't that cute? From one of our viewers and listeners. A little, I think it's homemade.
Shall I hold it up?
Yeah, you hold it up. And a little tiny matching hat as well, which is very cute. Goes up here. So there you go, a little matching hat.
And
also a lovely little blanket as well. Wow. This is from Judith from Leeds, who wrote me a lovely little letter, and to Patrick as well, wishing us well, saying that she loves watching our shows, and I hope we enjoy this little outfit. So there you go.
It's like your little baby is with us already.
So yes, Judith, I hope you're watching, because thank you very much indeed. It's really sweet of you to send that to me. It took a little while to get to us, but we've got it this morning, so that's so cute.
It's incredible craftsmanship, actually.
I'll make sure to take a little picture when the baby arrives.
Are you sure your baby isn't going to be French?
It's just something French about it. It's a good thing I like France, so there you go.
Oui, oui.
That's very cute indeed. I just thought I'd say thank you because it was a really nice surprise this morning.
Yeah, no, it is actually really, really lovely. It does, I mean...
To bring a tear to your eye, Tom.
Well, we haven't really...
Feeling very emotional.
I was going to say... We haven't really mentioned, your pregnancy in a little while. And
yeah, after the big reveal. After the big reveal.
You're still with us for a few months more before your due date.
I have to depart, yes.
Yeah.
Don't worry, you've got me for a little longer. We'll see how it goes.
Marvellous
See how
stuff.
it goes. It'll be rolling me in. before I leave this desk.
It'll be a GB baby.
GB News baby. GB baby.
GB News, the People's Channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. That's State of the Nation every Monday and Tuesday at 8 o'clock, only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo, and a very happy Father's Day. Now, this occasion deserves a toast, and Simon Roth from the Penderyn Distillery joins me now. We're going to be talking about, and indeed drinking, Welsh whisky. So just before we have the great pleasure of tasting this whisky, a word about differences between Scotch, Irish and Welsh whisky.
So Welsh whisky's been in existence since the mid-1880s. The original Welsh Whisky Company was formed in North Wales. It failed in the early 1900s, but Penderyn Welsh Whisky Company gave birth to whisky making in Wales in the year 2000. So we've been selling our whiskies and exporting around the world since then. The first dram was tasted by the now King Charles on St David's Day in 2004. And from that we've gone to many successes. And we're in maybe the top 10 of single malt whiskies in the UK.
What is the difference between Welsh and other whiskies?
Each of the countries in the whisky-making world would have their own legal definition of how whisky is made. So the Scottish whisky has a very clear, very strict way of making whisky. Welsh whisky received its own protected status back in July 2023. We call it a PGI, Protected Geographic Indicator. So our whisky has to be distilled, matured and bottled in Wales. Outside of that, pretty much we can do what we want in terms of distilling and maturation. For Penderyn, we use unique stills. Our still is made by a descendant of the great Michael Faraday, the Victorian engineer. Really? So it's unique and it produces an industry-high spirit, which gives the whisky its creamy, fudgy flavour and gives us a distinction from all other whiskies.
Creamy and fudgy, is that what I'm looking for?
I think so.
OK, I'll give it a little swirl. Stick my nose in there, my very considerable nose. I'm getting some marvellous aromas from that, which are reaching very deep into my nose, right up the top of my nostrils.
And I think you'll find the distinction for Penderyn is a very smooth finish. So on the palate.
Gosh, it's smooth from beginning to end. The first contact with the tongue is so smooth, and it remains smooth all the way through to the end. It's now, in case you're wondering, sort of pouring down the sides of my tongue towards the back there. What a very gorgeous drink. Do you recommend having that neat or with water?
You can drink it how you like. I think for us, we would always say for the first taste to drink it neat, to understand the flavours, but to open up the flavours of it, you can add ice or water is fine. Consumers might notice a slight opaqueness in the whisky if you do that, but that's because we don't filter under chill conditions, along with many whisky makers.
How significant are whiskies to the United Kingdom?
Whiskies have become the largest food and drink export for the UK. It's obviously dominated by our friends in Scotland, but there are now 60 distilleries in England and 5 in Wales and an emerging number in Northern Ireland. So it's become the UK's largest food and drink export, boosted in recent months by the announcement of free trade agreements with India, the US. Those will take their time to flow through. We obviously concerned a little bit maybe about tariffs and the impact of those. But the whisky industry is in good health, and for us that's great news.
Oh, that's very good. And some people like to visit a distillery and buy the bottle there. Where can they visit you, Penderyn?
We have 3 distilleries. So the original distillery was built in the Brecon Beacons in the village of Penderyn at the south of the National Park, so a beautiful part of the country. The other visitors and distillery centres are up in the north, in Llandudno, and we recently opened up a copper works distillery in Swansea in a repurposed copper mill. Copper was the centre of, Swansea was the centre of the world's copper industry up until the end of the 1890s. So we've repurposed a copper mill and brought it back to life.
And we didn't say cheers before. What's the word?
Yaki dar.
Yaki dar, indeed. Happy Father's Day too. Thank you very much, Simon Roth. Thanks to all my guests who joined me today. It's been a real pleasure to have your company. I will be back this time next week on GB News. But next up, it's Dawn Neeson with The Weekend. Dawn, what's coming up on your show?
Yaki dar, gentlemen. Very difficult sitting over here while you were doing that. We've got a cracking show for you, including if the full horrors of those grooming gangs are revealed. Will we ever trust politicians again? Live report from Tel Aviv, Trump's privates on paid, and why dads are so important. You don't want to miss a single minute, all coming up after this weather. We'll see you soon.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, a very good afternoon to you. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Over the next few days, many of us will be seeing fine and dry conditions overall. And that is courtesy of an area of high pressure that is building in from the Azores and will be gradually moving across many areas of the UK. For the time being, there are a few weather fronts just moving across the north, and they've been providing some fairly light outbreaks of rain. For Northern Ireland, England and Wales, though, they'll be petering out this evening, and so tonight will be largely dry with some clear spells, a few mist and fog patches. But there'll be more rain arriving into northwestern Scotland during the second half of the night, and that could turn heavy over the hills. A mild night nonetheless, temperatures holding up around 10 to 15 degrees Celsius. As we move into the new working week, it is going to be northern and western areas of Scotland that are the wettest. The heaviest of the rain will be first thing in the morning. It will tend to ease off a little bit throughout the day, but it's still going to be a fairly grey and damp day to come here. Quite a brisk breeze around the coast and the mountains. The bulk of the rain should avoid Northern Ireland, but I can't rule out that the odd spot stretches into western counties and it will be cloudier here. For England and Wales, though, there'll be a decent amount of sunshine right from the get-go on Monday morning, and that will continue throughout the day. Some fair weather cloud will bubble up and it could turn hazy at times, particularly across the far south of England, but nonetheless it'll be staying dry, fine and pleasant. The temperatures will be up by a few degrees tomorrow compared to the values we're seeing today. So we'll be climbing towards the mid-20s of Celsius across southeastern areas of England. But 22 degrees is possible for Northern Ireland, parts of central and eastern Scotland where it's driest, more around mid-teens for the northwest of Scotland where we do have that rain continuing to push its way through. And the winds will strengthen into Monday evening and overnight, potentially reaching gale strength for a time. So potential for further cloud and rain across the northwest first thing on Tuesday, but the trend is for things to generally turn more settled overall and temperatures to continue climbing. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£54,321 cash could be yours. Cash that you could spend however you like. It's like having an extra £1,000 each week for a whole year to play with. Someone is guaranteed to win this amazing amount of cash. So make sure that someone could be you. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network